What is good, everybody? So, ahead of this year's Australian Open, I'm going to do something a little bit different for my draw preview and predictions. I have teased my podcast a little bit on this channel, but not really all that much. But me and my friends from my hometown, Ryan and Musa, we have been doing this podcast. Same type of deal on the current happenings of tennis, just a more barbershop talk type deal, more casual, laid back, on the fly type content. Obviously, with the length of this, it'll be long for a drop preview. So feel free, do whatever. I will leave timestamps in the different quarters, so, whatever may interest you, or feel free to stick out the entire thing. If you'd like to access any of our prior episodes, our full catalog is on Spotify as the Racquet Rundown podcast, and I will link it also in the description below. With that, happy AO y'all, and it should be a wonderful fortnight ahead.
Welcome to the Racquet Rundown podcast. The Australian Open is upon us. And with it, we all bring a lot of excitement. There's a lot of guys who are vying for this title, and it's not as clear who's gonna win it. Of course, Novak Djokovic comes in 10 times champion here, but we got some new names on the block. Yannick Sinner potentially might be the leader of the list of challengers to Novak Djokovic for this title, along with some usual suspects like Carlos Alcaraz and Daniil Medvedev. Before we get into the draw, going quarter by quarter, all right, guys, let's recap some of the results coming in to the event here: Brisbane, Hong Kong, United Cup, etc. So, what are some of your biggest takeaways from the lead up to Australia? As we get into the first week here.
Well, I would say the big thing, obviously, is the resurgence of Grigor Dimitrov bleeding into the new year. It's got him poised in what's probably been his most consistent major, as off the top of my head, maybe that or Wimbledon, but it's got him poised for a big result in Australia. And yeah, he looks spectacular in Brisbane. Snapping a long overdue, title drought. He hadn't won a title since taking out the Tour Finals in 2017, so 5-year plus long title drought snapped there, and yeah, he should be feeling great, obviously. And of course, the other thing, probably the biggest thing out of Brisbane is Rafa re-injured, unable to play in Australia. Um, doesn't seem to be that all too severe, but of course, just even more scrutiny on, just how fragile he is at this point with as I've said, he's pretty much been unable to, since pandemic resumption, get 3 straight months healthy in. So, that's just a continuing reoccurring theme there, but obviously very unfortunate that he will not be in Melbourne. Potentially, his farewell there now being, last year, when he left broken again, to at the hands of Mackie McDonald second round. But yeah, hopefully we see him soon. He said it's not too severe, micro tear, the timetable, and that's typically been 4 weeks, so we could see him back before clay court season. Yeah, we'll see with that. But otherwise, Rublev looked good. Held seed in Hong Kong as expected. And yeah, I mean, a lot of the top guys looking good heading into Australia.
Yeah, there's also been a couple other not less heralded and publicized comebacks, but good to see Marin Cilic back on tour. Lost, unfortunately, to Struff in Hong Kong after a boatload of match points, which is unfortunate, but hopefully he can stay healthy for this fortnight. And then also coming back is Denis Shapovalov, lost early himself as well in Auckland. So a couple other comebacks to keep an eye on of former top 10 stars. And then I think another big thing is the young guys, the 22 and under crowd showing some good gains already to start the season. You have Arthur Fils making some semifinals in Auckland and quarters in Hong Kong. Some nice wins over Bornagoyo. He beat Altmaier, Gasquet, played a very competitive match with Rublev in Hong Kong as well. And then the likes of Jerry Shang out of China, beat Tiafoe, Bodic, and Jer in Hong Kong. Also played a close match to Rublev there. And then we have Jack Draper making the finals and losing yesterday to Lehechka. So there is a lot of excitement for this younger crowd, and I think that's a big storyline from the early tournaments heading into Australia Open.
Yep, it's definitely good to see some of these guys come back. You know, Cilic and Nadal, like, you know, these guys have been veterans on the tour for quite a while, and we'll just hope that Nadal comes back strong with Indian Wells in Miami, and really hope that we get to see a lot of tennis out of him this year. So I guess switching gears a little bit, I guess we can really start digging into the draw here. And starting with the top quarter, this is Novak Djokovic's quarter. Seems like he's got a pretty easy route here to the semi. I mean, you got some bets here. You have a potential third round with Andy Murray, right? But Andy Murray or Gael Monfils, but I mean, these guys are way past their prime. You know, fourth round, Ben Shelton could potentially pose some trouble. What are we expecting out of Ben? You know, obviously had some big results in majors last year, but you know, Novak played him in the US Open semi, and we saw the infamous mocking of that phone celebration with Novak really just putting Shelton, you know, down in straights. And so do we think that Shelton has the ability to really give Novak a test, or it's going to likely be 3, maybe 4 sets?
Yeah, I think Ben could siphon off a set, given how monstrous he's been serving. You know, of course, Djokovic is the best returner of all time, not really up for debate. But I really think Ben loves these conditions and loves the big stage, the big atmosphere. And you know, he has a lot of points to defend this week. You know, after making the quarterfinals last year with wins over some great players in Zhang, Jari, Paparin, and JJ Wolf. But I definitely think we would be in for some fireworks again. You know, I think, you know, Ben, you know, if Ben's raining down some first serves, you know, it's such a heavy ball that he hits that it's just hard for even the greats of the greats to, you know, to consistently, you know, fend that off. But I mean, Ben isn't, his biggest weakness is consistency right now. So that would be his undoing in a match against someone who's probably the most consistent player of all time. So I think that consistency will come back to bite him. But I mean, you know, I do think Ben will get there to that fourth round match because, you know, he doesn't have an easy draw, but, you know, I think Bautista Agut off the bat will get him really warmed up and will be a nice, you know, way to come into the tournament, even though, you know, RBA is a former Slam semifinalist. I think, you know, he's seen better days. And then probably Chris O'Connell or Christian Garin next. Shouldn't be too bad. And then you could have Stan or Manarino maybe awaiting in the third round. And, you know, I think, you know, either way, I think Ben's just the age gap there will come into full effect, you know, being, you know, a young spry 21 years old. You know, I think that really makes a difference in these brutal conditions down under, where we regularly see temperatures get up into the upper 90s, even into 100 degrees. You know, it really is important to have good stamina, fitness, and fresh legs. So I think that definitely gives an advantage to Ben to make the fourth round. But I think Novak would take him out in 4.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. And, you know, on the note of, you know, the conditions in Australia, and obviously Novak is an exceptional athlete, can deal with it extremely well. But for guys like Andy Murray, Monfils, right? Do you think they got any juice to really summon some prime level tennis and rise to the occasion against Novak and potentially push him to a 4 or 5 setter, or Novak's going to be pretty untroubled going to the quarter, maybe semi? In the quarters, it would be Tsitsipas who's unlikely to trouble him, or T Fritz, which, with all due respect, is not going to get it done against Novak.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think Djokovic, you have to like your draw. It's hard to really draw up any type of draw that you'd consider kind of challenging for him here. He's the 10-time champ, and yeah, I mean, obviously, this is the slam where he's had his most success, and he hasn't lost while he was good, really, in a decade since Wawrinka took him out in 2014. And aside from that, in general, since 2018, which he was still dealing with elbow trouble at that point. But yeah, I mean, Shelton. I mean, first of all, the about the old guys. I mean, it'd be great for vibes. It'd be awesome to see, but like again, I don't think either match would be close. I mean, Monfils has his hands full out of the gates with Hanfman to begin with. And Murray and Echeverry have played a couple tough matches. I think Echeverry got him in Basel most recently, but Murray beat him in Indian Wells. Um, I actually think, yeah, I think Murray will get there, but yeah, I mean, it's just hard. It's hard to summon prime level tennis when you move at a fraction of how well you used to in Andy's case. I don't think either match would be particularly competitive. And Shelton, and the roadblocks are there for him. I guess I'd also tentatively say he'll make it to Djokovic for a rematch, but not positive about that. But I'll say he does just because he's shown to be a pretty good big match player, and he seems to have adapted well to best of five early on. Uh, but yeah, I still think he's too raw to where once the serve comes back, he'll still be at Djokovic's mercy. So there's that. It's I don't foresee too much Novak having too much trouble getting out of his quarter. Um, and then I don't yeah, CT Plus it's like he's become Novak's pigeon really since 2021. Um and he's dealing with some physical ailments himself. Doesn't seem like he's completely recovered from his back injury at the tour finals 10 last year. He was having trouble with his back in the exhibition charity event they did a couple days ago when he played Djokovic. So I don't really have much faith in Steph making it there. He obviously has the popcorn match out of the gates with Berrettini, who also is, as he has dealing with some more injury trouble. I think he withdrew from Brisbane, so both of those guys not 100%. Um, I actually probably would back Taylor Fritz now that he's got another quarterfinal under his belt in the most recent major. But also in that quarterfinal, it was destroyed by Djokovic at the U.S. Open, and I don't really expect that to change all that much. Novak's shown to be very much at home in that matchup, playing T Fritz. It's tale as old as time with the big three guys when you got the big serving, big hitting archetype. It's just very there's just a lot of potential there to be overwhelmed by all the different ways those guys can beat you there. So
Yeah, and I
I
think the
would.
difference between Ben and Taylor is that Ben is such a better mover than Taylor,
Oh
even though
yeah.
Taylor's improved his fitness significantly. Ben's a more athletic, natural mover, so he's not. I wouldn't consider him in the same category as some other
Yeah.
big hitting, big serving types, in my
There's
opinion.
there's also the lefty factor for him too.
True.
And yeah, I mean he's still very raw, so like there's more of an X factor there. But yeah, I mean I would go Djokovic over Fritz in
Agreed.
that quarter.
Yeah. Would you say that the only guys really who pose much of a threat to Novak in this draw are the top four seeds?
Probably. Yeah. I mean it's unless his well he had some wrist issues in his last two matches at United Cup, unless that were to flare up again. I and even if it does, I mean, he's played the Australian Open with, a couple, um, you know, n just he's played injured the last 2 years. So at 2 years he participated and still found a way to get it done. So yeah, I mean, really, the end of the day, it would be, uh, you know, Alcaraz or Medvedev. And Novak's very much the junior. He's become like the junior version of Nadal at Roland Garros here. So, uh, yeah, it's it for anybody in the draw. It's an uphill battle.
Yeah. And I guess that leads me to the next quarter. We got the man of the hour, the trending pick, the hipster pick, Yannick Sinner. Um, it seems like there's a lot of buzz about Sinner, and of course he had a great close to the season last year. But Akil, you've told us many times you need to see it in best of five, and he opens up against one of the great players outside the seeds, Bodic. We've obviously seen some great stuff out of Bodic before, but Bodic is unlikely to really challenge him here. And I mean, he could potentially get Pedro Cachin second round, and I mean that's kind of I mean it's pretty favorable second round matchup. And from there might get JJ Wolf, maybe Baez, Kubler. And then from there he'll probably get Hachinov or Tiafo, and it seems like all these guys leading into the quarterfinal against Rublev, he should be untroubled. Korda's lurking down there um, in Rublev's quarter along with Demon, but what do we expect from Sinner? Do we think that it's going to be pretty smooth sailing to the semis?
I don't think it'll be smooth sailing beyond. Well, I don't think it'll be smooth sailing, but I do think he will get to the semis. He's first. He's playing tonight, actually. As of the time of this podcast, tonight, Saturday, 8 p.m. first on Rod Laver Arena. So that is, you know, he might be a little, shaky, rusty to start. As the Australian Open is adding an extra day. So they start Sunday their time, Saturday our time. Extra day of first round matches. But Boda could be a little tricky out of the gates. Second round, as you said, shouldn't be too bad. I think JJ could make things interesting third round. He won't win, of course, but he's coming off a fourth round last year where he picked up some nice wins over Schwartzman and Mo, among others, and then and then lost to Ben Shelton. So I think JJ is tricky in these conditions, and I think if Foe or catching up make it there, they can match, Sinner's hard hitting and pace, shot for shot. But they don't have the consistency that Yannick has developed. But I mean, in these conditions and with the court, they've slowed down the court in recent years. I definitely think Yannick will be made to work before getting to the semis. And then if he gets one of Rublev, Korda, Demon's very on fire, just beat Novak in straights in United Cup. Yari is also one to watch out for. Had a great year last year. Like his match against Alcaraz at Wimbledon was, even though he lost, was a great one, for example. So he's got a lot of tricky players, but no one that's going to take him out. I don't think, given his consistent, quarterfinal, semifinal results in his previous couple years in slams. So I do think he'll be made to work a lot, but I don't think he's gonna lose before the semi.
I actually think of the top four that Sinner probably has, the easiest path forward to a semi. Um,
It's between him and Novak for
yeah,
sure.
it's probably between him and Djokovic, but well, I get, yeah, it's either one of those. But um,
You guys
yeah,
aren't giving Demon enough credit, man. Demon's a monster, man.
and
Speedster.
The Demons looked great. Again this year. I mean, he typically has in that team competition going back to like the first year of ATP Cups. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
home crowd too. He really feeds off. He's one of those players that really feeds off a roaring crowd. So
I wouldn't be too shocked to see Demon make the quarter, take out Rublev.
yeah, I wouldn't
I don't
either.
think that, I don't think he'll. Well, he can make quarter. He's not beating Yannick.
But yeah,
He could beat Rublev. That's very realistic.
I mean, he doesn't have the firepower to get it done against Sinner, but I think he could
Yeah.
outgrind a guy like Rublev potentially. So,
and
but Rublev's also been picking it up, man. He's closing the gap with the elite guys. I think Rublev's made some significant strides. So he could also, potentially take a set off
yeah.
Sinner.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, Sinner has some like interesting names, I guess, but Bodek hasn't been good for a while. It's like that going back to like lab.
Why are you like saying that about Godic? Like, I mean, this guy's like the goat. It's Godic van de Zandt. Come on.
2021 U.S.
No
Open.
longer
Alcaraz get a
2021.
set
That's
off
what I'm
of
saying.
Medvedev.
That's what I'm saying. It's no
You,
longer 2021 though. It's like Bodek looking a little
you
washed.
never you never count out Godic. All right, don't ever count out Godic. Like, I mean, I expect a five setter. Sinner narrowly escapes first round. That's what I'm gonna say right here. So
Yeah, I mean, I think the point there, yeah, the point there is like, so I mean, honestly, that isn't complete as far-fetched as it would be on the surface, just because I still think, as I said, you got to see it in best of five. That's the last box to check for Sinner, but Sinner historically hasn't been great at like just plowing through guys that he should. Yeah, being more efficient in early rounds. Even recently, I guess the U.S. Open he was fine. He was fine with it, but Wimbledon, like he didn't play anybody great. Heading to the semis, but he dropped sets along the way to guys like Galan. He had a tough match, I think, with Ali as well. Along the way, and obviously the French losing early to Altmaier in like a super grueling five setter, and yeah, I mean, historically, Sinner hasn't been the best at that. Again, I do believe that like there's reason to believe that obviously Sinner's poised for a breakthrough 2024. But yeah, I've seen a lot of expert picks, picking him for the title, and I don't know, that's seems like a bridge too far this early. I mean, I expect him to go deep, of course. Um, but not necessarily because you expect the momentum from the end of his 2023 to carry over, because that so rarely happens unless you're Djokovic Federer. A lot of these guys have gone on who've had big end of the years have gone on to be unable to carry that into the Australian Open. But in Sinner's case, I think the combination of what lays ahead of him, not too many threats. He owns Demonor, um, and he's just his higher end is just better than anybody he could be faced with. I'm not sure off the top of my head how he's fared with Rublev head to head, but um, obviously Andre's made quarters now of like it feels like a lot. The only one I can remember recently him not making it was losing to Sonego at the French, but he's been he's been, steady as ever, making it to that quarterfinal straight stage. And I don't know. I wouldn't expect that to change. I think I think it'll be either Sinner Rublev or either Sinner Demonor, but either of those guys, Sinner should come through to another semi here. None of these guys are, the type of matchup he struggled with. And even then, he started to turn the screw on that with Medvedev at the end of the year. But, none of those are of that ilk of the big guy, big move, or great mover, big serve, great mover like the Medvedev Zverevs that, last major he lost to Zverev in a super tight match. So yeah, I mean, I think Sinner's happy with his draw, and yeah, I'd say Sinner out of his quarter as well.
Yeah. I think no extra comments from me there. I think we got to move into the bottom half where things are a little more interesting. We got Holger in the same quarter as our boy Medvedev, and so that will be an interesting quarter here. Um, Likely expect the seeds to hold to the quarters here as well. You got Artie Fees, lurking around for Holger in the third round. That'll be interesting. Can't forget about Greek Spore. He's lurking down there. Safaline, also a great player. So it won't be straightforward for Art Fees, but Art Fees, we've got a lot of Art Fees fans here with Akil and Ryan. Both of these guys think that Art Fees is him, and he's going to be one of the best players in the world soon. So expect big things out of him. Think that could be a very entertaining encounter if it happens in the third round between Runa and Art Fees. Um, Aside from that, I'm seeing, Hubie potentially could cause some issues. You got a potential sort of popcorn match with Shapovalov and Hubie. If Shapovalov brings it, gets out of his head a little bit, maybe could see him pull an upset there. And then Dimitrov also lurking. So there's a lot of pretty talented guys lurking in this section. Dimitrov should be able to make it at least to the fourth round. Um, and then from there, he's probably going to play Medvedev. So yeah, Felix is going to play team first round. It's going to be a hell of a match. Hopefully, of course, this isn't a team of old, but it'll be interesting to see how Felix performs and if he can shake off what was a horrible season last season. So I expect Medvedev to play Runa, but do you guys see anything else happening?
I do. I do. I think, and this is where I'd be super bold, but I'm gonna take Feast out of this semi. And
You're
that's a
taking
very
Feast
extremely
to the
bold
semi.
pick.
To the
Feast to the
semi.
semi, yeah. So I still
Wow.
don't. So let's break it down match by match. So first of all, I do think that Feast doesn't have the easiest of draw. I mean, there's a lot of big names in this quarter, but Vesely off the bat, Vesely's always a tough out at majors, but he's also getting up there in age and coming off some injury issues. Safali Greek Spore, both those guys are consistent ball strikers and can beat a lot of good players on a good day. Like Safalin just beat Alcaraz and Paris Bercy last year, but I think Feast comes through. And then I think he'd play Holger third round. I don't trust Holger's fitness level yet in majors, and the Australian Open is the major where you need like the best fitness level, I would say, out of any of the majors due to the conditions, the heat rule, the humidity, and yeah, Australian Open. It's a very tough test of your stamina. So you're most likely to cramp at this major. So I think Feast his body's a little more developed, I would say, than Holger. That might be a bit of a hot take, given that Holger's been on tour longer. But I think Feast has a shot making to pull off an upset, and he's certainly not afraid of anyone. He's certainly one of the best athletes already on tour, I would say. And then you could see, Hubie, Humbert, maybe if Shapo gets hot, or Zhizhen Zhang also in the fourth round. And I think those are all winnable as well. None of those guys have really made like any crazy deep runs in Australia before, to where they would, you wouldn't think Arthur would have a chance. And then you would face probably Dimitrov or Medvedev in a quarterfinal. I think Grigor could very well take out Medvedev, given, he did last year, and he's coming off one of the best years of his career. So I think that's definitely in the realm of possibility. He's made the semis here, played an epic 5-setter with Rafa in 2017. So, and Medvedev's also had great success here, Australian Open finalist in 2022 to Rafa. But
And
I
2021.
really think what I really
And
think that
2021. He's a two-time Medvedev two-time finalist.
2021, right? Yeah, also against the Joker then. But I think there's going to be one surprise semifinalist. I think it's very rare that you see all the top 4 seeds make the semis. So this is my upset pick of the tournament.
That is wild. Absolutely bananas. I hope Holger Rune gets to see this podcast before the tournament starts, because I think he's gonna take
I'm
it
very
personally.
high on Holger, but
No, I think he's gonna take it personally. I think Holger's got that dog in him, and I think this is gonna give him a little extra motivation to
Holger's a
to
very
absolutely.
clutch player. Australian Open is a huge fitness test for you, and I don't know.
I think Holger's coming out of the section. I think Holger's gonna
That's
come out
very
of the section.
possible. That's very possible.
I think Holger's gonna come out of the section. I think he's going to battle. Yeah, you know what? 50-50 flip a coin with Medvedev and Dimitrov, because Dimitrov's looking so excellent. Medvedev is Medvedev at the end of the day, so I'd probably give a slight edge to him. But I think Holger's been working extremely hard in the offseason. We've been hearing about how intense his workouts have been. I think he's going to come in with a new mentality. I think he's really looking for results. He's seeing some of his peers with Alcaraz and Sinner getting the limelight, and I think he's going to have a I'm still here. Don't forget about me moment with this tournament and make it to the semifinal. So I expect Holder to come out of this section, but I do think we're going to see a ton of competitive matches. I expect 5-setters. I expect potentially some drama in these matches. I think it's going to be some crazy matchups, and I do think, for the record, Fees and Runa is going to be a crazy 3rd round match, and I expect it to go 4 or 5 sets, regardless. So credit to Fees. I mean, full credit. He, like you said, he's an unbelievable athlete, and he's going to be top 10 soon.
Yeah, just won his first title last year in Lyon.
He's definitely coming. He's rapidly improving. So totally see
Next
that
gen
pick.
finalist. Yeah.
Yeah, lost to Joker's boy, but it's okay. Yeah. What do you think, Akil?
Yeah, I think of those 4 top seeds, Medvedev definitely got the toughest of the bunch. He's even as early as 2nd round, you could see Rusevorius. 3rd round, you could see FAA. Those 2 guys played one of the better non-Big Three matches I've seen of the last couple of years, probably of this decade, in 2022. And Dimitrov's a tough matchup for him. He's a guy, Medvedev doesn't deal with slice very well, and Dimitrov is one of the very best on tour. And Dimitrov has historically played him very tough. So yeah, he's gonna have his hands full. Hurkacz, the other, big name here. But again, it's so tough because, aside from that 2021 Wimbledon run, he's really been pretty bad at majors for a top seed. And there's always stumbling bed blocks for Hurkacz early in a major, just because he's just been so unreliable early on. Um, I mean, I'd probably also say, um, you know, Holger will make this quarterfinal. Fees has shown some flashes for sure. The already it's pretty early. His game is awesome. He's pretty. There's not really like anywhere on the court he's particularly like he lacks from. So, he's awesome, but yeah, I'd expect Holger to at least like make his first quarter at a slam here. It's a really good opportunity for him. I think that's really the only only person I'd worry for him, the potential fees ruin a match, in his path to that quarterfinal. Um, I'd probably bet against Hubi making it to him in the fourth round. For those reasons I laid out. And I probably will pick Dimitrov over Medvedev in the fourth round. That's that. As I said, is he's somebody that historically has played Medvedev really well, and yeah, I mean, aside from Dimitrov recently, it's been a while since he's won a big match in a major. Yeah, I think the last one was 2019 in at the Open when Federer's back went out on him. But yeah, I mean, that's really the only question mark I have with him is like, is he gonna fold in a big spot? But he's so full of confidence right now. He's historically played Medvedev great. And this has been, the major where he's been most competitive. So um yeah, I'll pick Dimitrov upsetting Medvedev. And then I don't know. Holger actually played a pretty good match when they played in Brisbane, but Grigor was just in awesome form. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'd pick there. But I think I'll also say Holger gets him back. I'd say Holger just because the Dimitrov and Runa played at Wimbledon. I'd probably see a match along those lines where it was razor tight, and Dimitrov honestly probably should have gone up 2 sets in that match, but yeah, I think I trust Runa more in the big spots still, and yeah, I mean, I think Holger, at least his first hardcourt quarterfinal in a slam, is long overdue. But yeah, I tentatively I'll say Holger um to the semi. I still obviously have the durability concerns, the endurance concerns. But yeah, I mean that's probably the only question mark I have on him, and albeit it's a big one, but I don't know if that aspect will be tested all too much aside from the fees match heading to the quarters.
Yep. No, I think yeah, the durability thing, I think he's gonna have to be pretty efficient if he wants to go deep, deep, deep in this tournament and like really perform well in the semifinal. Because we're now in the final quarter and we know who's in this quarter, right? We got Carlos Alcaraz, and Carlos Alcaraz, I I have no idea how has been cast under the radar, and I just don't really understand it. I don't know. A lot of analysts are not really thinking about Alcaraz here, and I get since Wimbledon he hasn't had the craziest results in the world, but at the same time, like I mean, he's still very much the second best player in the world. I don't think there's a doubt about that. Like there should not be a doubt about that, and I think some people do doubt that, but he is, in my opinion, the second best player in the world. And I think he should be coming into this event the second favorite. I think some people would say Sinner, but I just don't think that's the case. I mean, I think Alcaraz is a two-time major champ. I mean, he didn't get the chance to play Australia last year, but this is going to be a first year seeing Carlos Alcaraz in contend like major favorite form, right? And like of course, when he lost to Berrettini, like he was in his infancy, and so he was in his breakthrough year. So I expect Alcaraz to go deep, and I mean, looking at his draw here, like he's got some tricky guys, maybe with Bublik third round. Could get like a Tommy Paul who's given him some trouble fourth round, and then potentially maybe some problems with Zverev, who is probably going to be the biggest threat to the court, in the quarterfinals. But I fully expect him to make the semis. I fully expect him to make the semis. I think he might have to have some longer battles, 4 or 5 sets. I could totally see Zverev being a 5 setter. Um, I could see Zverev really like bringing a high level, but I do think that in the end, we're going to see Carlos Alcaraz come out of this quarter, and he's going to be facing whoever's in that third quarter, who I think is going to be Runa, and I think he's going to be the favorite to go to the final. But yeah, I'm curious about what you guys think. I mean, I really just don't understand why Carlos Alcaraz is getting cast under the radar. It's a little confusing to me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's pretty much just recency bias, as Ryan said before we started, but yeah, I mean that's the only rationale there really is. Maybe on paper Sinner might translate better to the surface, the Australian Open surface, that I guess, but still, I mean, there's no reason why Alcaraz shouldn't be excellent in Australia, and I expect that to be the case. Um, but yeah, I mean, also he just hasn't really played, I guess, in the time that Sinner was still doing some big things in between with the end of Turin and the Davis Cup win over Djokovic, so that's obviously also more fresh in people's minds. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's no question mark with Alcaraz in best of five, where that's still unanswered for Yannick to a degree. Um, his draw, I think he'll be just fine, honestly, before a quarterfinal. Obviously, Tommy Paul's played him tough, but I mean, I matchup wise, I don't really see why Tommy Paul like would that'd be a consistent trend. I think matchup wise, like Alcaraz matches up just fine with him. It's not like anything um, in particular that Tommy Paul does to like make him feel uncomfortable. Maybe just, how great an athlete he is. He's not used to as many of his missiles coming back, and he can tend to, you know, play a bit dumb, I guess, when that's the
Overhit.
case. Yeah, overhit. And but, both those times where he played Tommy, in in the summer, he wasn't, playing particularly great. Um, and I'd expect I expect him to be, right back to his typical self after this long a break. So I'm not really too concerned with that potential match. Obviously, it's the one that jumps out the most, but before that, I don't expect him to have any problems really at all. Um, yeah, Zverev is the one where, sometimes against the very best guys, albeit Zverev's woes and slams, typically against the very best guys, he tends to give them trouble. Um, and unlike the U.S. Open where he's coming off a super tough match against Sinner, I don't know if I don't see much for Zverev to really expend himself too much heading into that match, and
Hmm.
I I was pretty high on Sasha and how he'll end the year this year, just because he's, if not, I don't think he's necessarily his 2021 self right now, but he's obviously going to start this year, you would assume, much better than he did last year, just because he was coming off the break. And I guess Casper, Casper's a question there, because he looked excellent at United Cup. Um, and he's also a guy that I expect to have a much better year than last year. And so far the early returns are pretty good there. Um, and I wouldn't necessarily say that he'll just like he'll be, Zverev will roll over him. I wouldn't expect that at all. Um, so I could maybe see Casper battling him, but yeah, I think Zverev, Alcaraz are on a collision course, and yeah, thus far in the similar way to Medvedev, albeit Alcaraz and Zverev played a decent amount of matches early on, so their head-to-head is, skewed a bit there, but. I think in the same way against Medvedev, I think Alcaraz matches up, pretty decently well against Zverev to where Zverev, like he did in RG 2022, Zverev would have to play, his very best to beat him. And yeah, more margin for error for Alcaraz there. I think his first Australian Open as, the contending Carlos Alcaraz, it goes according to plan. I don't foresee him, losing anywhere before the semifinals.
I will agree with you that Alcaraz wins this quarter. But I think this is going to be a fun quarter because we have some 22 and unders that are looking pretty enticing in this quarter. I predict seeing wins, main draw wins from Mickelson, Lehechka, Jack Draper, and Jerry Shane, all in the 22 and
Oh
under
yeah.
group. And I'm actually going to be bold. I think Sasha goes out third round to Lehechka. Lehechka's beaten them both times they've played on tour level. Lehechka's coming off an Adelaide title this last week where he had some very nice wins over Draper, destroyed Sebi Korda,
Yeah, that's
beat
fair.
Yari, and Lajovic is also a solid win. So I think Lehechka really comes into form, and I think he takes out Sasha third round. That's my bold pick.
Yeah, he's
Uh,
looked strong to set. He also took the set off Djokovic
like I
at
said, off
United Cup.
Djokovic and
Yeah.
United Cup. Yep, yep. So
Ryan, you're full of bold predictions this tournament.
I
It's
think
good
I
to
think
see.
this is a tournament where we really see a lot of young talent shine through. I think Jerry Shang at the bottom of the draw upsets Bublik second round. Has a nice competitive match with Alcaraz. Of course, he won't win that, but and yeah, I think Jack Draper could
Yeah,
easily make the fourth. I think
Draper as
Jack
long as
Draper
he's
could.
sorry, go ahead. My
Oh,
bad.
I was gonna say, I think Draper could take out Tommy Paul second round and
I was
get
about to yeah.
take out Kecmanovic third round.
Yeah,
Another nice.
Draper will be fun this year as long as, he stays healthy. He looks like he's looked really good. He looked really good this past week.
Yeah, he beat Bublik and he just beat Tommy Paul and Kecmanovic in Adelaide. So I think he could definitely do it again. That Kecmanovic match was a 3.5 hour epic, saving multiple match points.
Mm.
Um, also beat Sebi Baez. So Bublik too. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a quarter, and this whole tournament, but especially this quarter, we're going to see that young talent really shine through, and I'm really excited about it. And I don't think Casper's a lock to make a deep run either because he'll beat Ramos Vinolas first round, no problem. But Max Purcell had an
Yeah.
amazing year last year, a lot of quality wins, pushed
Purcell is
pushed
peaking right now.
yeah,
He's
pushed
really picking
Alcaraz
up his
very well
level.
in Cincy. I saw that one live. Tough three
He's got a
setter.
lot of firepower. Big
Yeah,
serve,
yeah.
huge serve.
And great net game, great doubles player. He's
Yeah, totally unbelievable. No, he's an unbelievable doubles player. It's really, really impressive.
yeah. So this could be I know I said it about the previous quarter, but this also could be a very interesting quarter. Um, albeit I'd be shocked if Alcaraz didn't take this quarter and move on to the semi and eventually to the final at least. But I think there's going to be a lot of fun action week one here.
Totally. So this brings us to the semis, guys, and I think Novak and Yannick Sinner is pretty much we're all aligned there that that's what's likely to happen in the top half. I expect a battle. I really do. I think Yannick's playing at a different level. I mean, I think it's going to be five setter. I really do. I think it's going to be a five setter. I think Yannick's going to push Novak very, very hard. In the last three matches, we've seen him really play Novak tough. I think in the end, it's going to be experience and maturity that gets Novak the win over Yannick, and I think Novak's going to make it to the final narrowly. But I expect Novak to come out of that one. Do you guys expect anything? Do you think Sinner is going to take that win?
No, I agree. I think Novak would probably take that. That could go probably 4 or 5 sets. Um, yeah, I think like as I said earlier, I think Yannick. I know Akil said he had an easy draw. I don't think he has like a draw that he's gonna lose, but I think his draw is full of guys that are gonna make him work and steal some sets. So I think he might, fatigue may become a factor if he were to play a physical match with Novak. Novak having definitely an easier draw in my opinion. Um, so I think it'll be a competitive match, but then the fourth or fifth set, Novak pulls away and wins like 6-2 or something. So that's what I see.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
So
if Sinner gets a fifth set and that's the reason he loses, then yeah, he's answered that best of five question for sure.
Totally.
Um, and yeah, I'll probably go Djokovic in four. Um, I think for him, if the semifinal happens, obviously it'd be yeah, it'd probably be a dream given how much how good their matches have been of late. Um, but I think, for Djokovic, obviously he's never lost semifinals or finals in at the Australian Open once he's made the semis. He's 10 out of 10 in both stages. And that's obviously a factor there. His aura is just boosted all the more in Melbourne. Um, and also probably on his mind would be, trying to get to the final fresh. Um, that's been a he's taken care of business of that like incredibly well. Um, in the last year, none of his semis have been particularly he's gotten through them pretty easily. To be fresh for obviously the big dance in the end. Destroyed Tommy Paul in the semi last year. I guess Alcaraz was going to be a war of a match in Paris, but obviously got through pretty unscathed in the end. And then yeah, took care of Sinner and as businesslike as you can with Sinner, with Sinner at this stage in his career where he's obviously not a very easy out to straight set. And of course, the semis of the US Open had very little trouble for two sets against Shelton. So yeah, I'd probably say with, some urgency ahead of I think we'll get an Alcaraz Djokovic final, but with there'll definitely be added urgency with that being on the cards to get through without needing five. So I'd say Djokovic in four there.
yep. So that brings us to the bottom half, and we all have conflicting picks here, but you know, with my projected matchup of Runa versus Alcaraz, I would probably still go with Alcaraz. I think all of us would probably say
Yep.
Alcaraz is going to come out of this half,
Yep.
no matter who he plays. I think Alcaraz. I don't know if he pays attention to the press. I don't know if he pays attention to the media, but if he does, and I suspect he does to a slight low degree, I think he'll have maybe a little extra motivation to, kind of show that he's still, very much one of the top two best guys in the world, and want to be, you know, want the public to know that he's very much still Carlos Alcaraz, and let's not read too much into what happened after Wimbledon. He is still uh, already a legend of the game and going to be an all-time great. So, yeah, I fully expect Carlos to shut it down with Runa probably in four sets. And, uh, if we're all in agreement there, we can talk a little bit about yet again another Joker as final. Is that what we expect, or are we all in alignment that we're going to see Joker as the final?
I
Yeah.
expect that to be the case, yeah.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
but I
So
mean, I do want to say like just for Alcaraz, obviously these are predictions for it. I would also say Alcaraz over Una in four. He's just further along than everybody else in his age group, and obviously the best of five question isn't there with him at all. But Yeah, no, this happened at the US Open last year, and I did underestimate, how big a factor it could play. Because even if Alcaraz made it to the final at the US Open, it was going to be, tough for him coming off, if he came back for against Medvedev, it would have been a tough five setter. And, he wasn't that far away from doing that. And that's the scenario that I would worry about for Alcaraz is if Daniil Medvedev happens to make it to the semifinals, which is certainly a possibility. He's still easily one of the top three players in the world on a hard court. That's without a question. I'm only picking Dimitrov over him there because Dimitrov, very recently beat him in Paris, and Dimitrov's in such good form. Dimitrov matches up with him well, but if it is Zverev, Medvedev for Alcaraz, I do expect, that to accumulate a bit of a physical toll on him. Uh, so that's the
Yannick Sinner's knocking on the door, by the way, of that top three hard court, sort of classification. I think Medvedev still probably holds that third spot, but I think Yannick Sinner's right there with him. So,
yeah. I mean,
for the record,
you'd still have to give him the edge just because best of five. But yeah, um, yeah, that's the only scenario where I could see the semifinal, having a bearing on how that final plays out.
so you still think fatigue? You don't think Carlos is going to have? I also think the placement and timing of the semifinal is going to be important. If I remember correctly, here in Australia, they have the semis on both Thursday and Friday. Is that correct? Or
Not sure.
just
Did they
on?
change that? I forget if I feel like they changed that recently or maybe in the last. I'm not sure if that's I just gotta let me see. I'm not totally sure, but I just feel like they might have changed one player getting a day extra rest, even though that's been a thing for a while. Let me see.
They
Because
didn't. Last year, it was Kechenov Tsitsipas semifinal on Thursday, and then the Friday semi was Djokovic, Tommy Paul.
Okay, yeah, I
So
might
they
be
have
wrong.
not changed that. So that
Yeah.
is
yeah,
that's a good
that
point.
that does, yeah.
Yeah.
So that plays a big factor. Then I mean, if Alcaraz gets a semifinal on Thursday, if he gets pushed five, he's going to be fine. He's going to be totally fine. And truly, I mean, honestly, even if he plays on Friday, I mean, the young fella should be able to recover, right? And I understand, like, 5 hour grueling battle, but I think Carlos Alcaraz is a world class athlete. I really think that, as he's growing into his body, he should be ready to go to war a second time against Novak in the final and not fade out. But yeah, I think that this timing of the semifinal is going to be critical. Um, personally, biasly, I would like for Carlos to get the Thursday semi just so that he has the little extra rest to play Novak. And so we get a good war there because you can put Novak an hour before his final and have him have a grueling match, and he could probably play the grueling five setter match again in the final. I mean, he's just superhuman. Novak's just unbelievable. I mean, I really think there's not a lot of toll that he can't sustain at this point. So yeah, I really hope that Carlos gets the rest he needs if he does have a grueling battle. But now, as we look at the final, Djokovic Alcaraz round six. Is that right?
Correct. Not
Round
including
six.
the head-to-head, not including the exhibition in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. So round six. Um, yeah. Novak would have to be the favorite without a doubt. I mean,
And
Nadal Jr. at the French, very much so. This is yeah, basically the equivalent for hardcore. And so like you got to give the edge to Novak. I expect a war again, probably a five setter again. But again, I mean, if I'll say this, if Alcaraz beats Novak in Australia, Alcaraz is it is an inflection point. I think it's a bigger inflection point than Wimbledon because I remember when we were discussing Wimbledon, after Wimbledon, either on the pod or off the pod, guys. Like, I think I was talking to you, Akil, and I was saying, well, you know, this is crazy. Alcaraz just beat him in Wimbledon. Like, I mean, this is and Akil, you said no, he's gonna be back. Novak's going to be back, and he absolutely was back. Came back, won the Open, and I think that was because he got a little fire lit under him. I think he underestimated Alcaraz at that point, and I think he's not making the same mistake at all. I think he's not underestimating any of these young fellas, and I think he's been working really hard to be extremely sharp. But I think if Alcaraz were to beat him on his home court in Australia, I think that would really change the dynamic of their rivalry. And I think he would be firmly in Novak's head. I think he'd be the favorite for the French. And I think, honestly, if he won the French as well, somehow, I think he would be the favorite for Wimbledon. And I think he'd be like very much the new top guy in the world. So I think this match, if it comes to be, which I really hope it does, is going to be pivotal for tennis history. I think more pivotal than Wimbledon. I think this would be like a very much changing the guard match if Alcaraz beat Novak, because Wimbledon was not the changing the guard match that everyone thought. This would be the changing the guard match. Djokovic on his favorite court if Alcaraz were to take him out.
It depends on what you consider changing of the guard. I would still say it's a changing of the guard moment. I mean, changing of the guard to me doesn't necessarily have to mean the other guy's done. I just think in the sense that it was it was cemented Alcaraz as, what a lot of people thought he was, and stamped him. So in that sense, I would say, and someone beating Djokovic.
I think this would be a notch above that. I think this would be a
It
notch
would.
above.
It probably would, yeah. I mean, in the sense that like Alcaraz taking over as the man, yeah, I would say, yeah, but um I mean, yeah,
I think a good analogy for this would be Nadal beating Federer in Wimbledon '08. Like, I think it's that type of paradigm shift if Alcaraz beats Novak here in Australia.
yeah, I mean,
I think it would be a new man at the helm of men's tennis. Like, I think like very much Alcaraz is not the new man after Wimbledon last year. We were premature. But
I don't know. I wouldn't say that. I mean, he's not the man, but like, I mean, he's stamped. I still would call it a. I mean, yeah, it just depends on what we consider changing of the guard. But I mean, that was still. I still consider that to be an inflection point. I mean, I just wouldn't say that changing the guard most necessary like had to mean that he just carried the torch forward as the guy after that.
Yeah, I mean, Fed versus Sampras, 2001 Wimbledon, that was considered changing of the guard. Sampras still won another major after that, and Fed didn't really push off till 2 years later, winning '03 Wimbledon. So, I mean, I agree with Akil there on
But yeah,
that.
I mean, anyways, as far as the final itself, yeah, I mean, I'd agree with you that I think it would. My pick would be Djokovic in five. Nobody really beats Alcaraz easy in these big matches, and really vice versa. Um, and yeah, I mean, obviously, it is the it's both of them know, whenever they play, there's a lot on the line. Yeah, I don't think I a lot of I think a lot of people are considering, Cincy final to be a little bit of a chink in the armor for Alcaraz. I did not see it as such. I think whenever they play again, it'll be tight as hell. But yeah, you still back Djokovic in Australia here. That record is unblemished at the back end of this major. Um, I do think it is important, as I said, for Djokovic to come through in straights. Endurance his has taken a hit. We just haven't really been able to tell because he's been so efficient at the back end of these majors. But yeah, I mean, if Djokovic is, because even 2021 when you went five with Zverev, that obviously took its toll along with the pressure and whatnot heading into the final of the U.S. Open. But we just haven't seen him have to be tested like that in a while, and that's to his credit being so efficient. Um,
Fair
but
enough.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what I was saying about Novak being a superhuman, I think there is a limit there. I think at the end of the day, age does play a factor. Alcaraz is going to have more endurance, and Novak needs to be efficient leading up to that final, no doubt about it. So just want to be clear there for the
oh yeah,
record.
I think
I'm
I think both will be fresh. I mean, I'm
yeah,
anticipating both to
totally.
be fresh.
I am
Especially
curious
Djokovic.
about yeah. I think both are going to be fresh, and Novak's clinical. He knows the importance of being fresh for these finals. I mean, he's that's why he does things like so efficiently and knows how to crack his opponents the right way. So I am curious the matchup on grass, right? Carlos versus Novak, and the matchup on hard court at the Australian Open. Do you think Novak had a bigger edge on the Wimbledon grass, or do you think he would have a bigger edge here in Australia?
Probably Australia. Um, but I mean, I don't know. It's tough to tell because Alcaraz was so good um on grass last year between Queens and Wimbledon that by the final a lot of people had changed their minds about how that final would go. Um yeah, I don't it's tough to say because they haven't really played on hard on aside from the Cincy final, like, Alcaraz is raw as hell on indoors, and it seems to easily be his worst surface. So you kind of throw that match out the window. Um, but yeah, I mean,
I would,
since he's a pretty
yeah,
quick
I would,
court, so I don't know like how big a difference we'd see here.
I would say Novak has the bigger edge here in Australia. Again, I hark back to the conditions that he's gone through so many times. Alcaraz hasn't made a deep run here yet. Of course, he was injured last year, and then the Berrettini loss when he was young, 2022. So, I definitely think the conditions and dealing with heat, it definitely makes Djokovic a big edge here. And the stamina of a long, grueling match down under is something that I have no doubt that Alcaraz can handle well, but you have to say that edge is more prevalent than it would be at Wimbledon when, heat and isn't as much a factor.
Yeah, and also because they play those final weekend matches in Australia at night, so yeah, Djokovic loves that too. So.
True, very true.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, let's hope that match comes to fruition. I would be so excited to see it. Um, you can bet your top dollar everyone on this call is going to be losing quite a lot of sleep the next couple of weeks as we watch some of these Australian Open matches late into the night. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that wraps up our preview. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Racket Rundown podcast, and we'll see you next time.